Irish potato famine was a time of great misery in Ireland. In the 6-year period, the potato famine would kill over 1 million Irish and cause millions to flee their homes in search of food. The damage the failing potato crops would bring to the agricultural-based Ireland would leave the country in shambles for years after the dreaded blight had gone. Ireland was one of the poorest of the Western countries, as most of the population could not read or write and life expectancy was only in the 40s. Families were generally large, with multiple people living in the same housing, even sometimes sharing their rooms with the farm animals. In the mid-1800s, Ireland and its peasants had grown extremely reliant on the potato because of its ability to nourish, fill their appetites, and the potato was able to grow well in Ireland's moist climate. Little did the Irish know about the disease that would come and change everything they had known. In 1845, the leaves of the potato crops mysteriously started to curl, turn black, and rot. The cause of this mysterious issue was a fungus called potato late blight. The fungus had been brought on the ships of those traveling from North America to England, with the winds eventually spreading the airborne spores to Ireland. The favorable conditions of Ireland were exactly what the fungus needed to flourish. The devastating fungus would spread through rainfall and spread until half of all of Ireland's crops were claimed. However, not all crops were initially claimed by this devastating fungus. The cleverness of this fungus could spread to already harvested potatoes through its airborne spores. The people were in a frenzy. This was the first time that every potato crop within Ireland had failed, making this a national potato crop failure. The British were afraid that if they extended too much help to the starving Irish, it would only make the country's citizens dependent on foreign aid. The British believed next year's crops would end the food shortage. In response to this belief, Britain would ship only meager amounts of corn and would only provide temporary relief and never truly deliver Ireland's citizens with permanent help. While much of Ireland's potato crops were failing, some Irish farmers had planted native seeds to Ireland, such as oats, barley, oatmeal, and wheat. Although these crops were sustainable, the starving Irish farmers were in need of money. Irish farmers sold much of their grain to England in hopes to avoid eviction. Irish also sold their livestock and possessions to buy food and pay what bills they could. Food riots began to take foot, but were unsuccessful as the peasants were growing weaker. The second failure of the potato crop came a harsh winter, with snow burying houses for weeks. The potato crops yielded in the fall were only enough potatoes to last Ireland 1 month, making the winter even more devastating. Once things thawed, people began to flock to local relief organizations in order to obtain jobs so they might feed their families and pay their rent. Many of the workers often died on the job from being malnourished and feverish. Desperate for food, people began looking for other modes of nutrition, such as wild berries, turnips, cabbage leaves, seaweed, shellfish, roots, weeds, and grass. While all deaths were directly related to malnutrition, it was not the only killer in the famine years. The majority of Ireland's population died from typhus, dysentery, or relapsing fever. Beggars and the homeless spread disease, often causing kind-hearted people who provided for them to contract their diseases. The dead would be buried without coffins inches below the soil or placed in ditches with multiple bodies. In the worst cases, a person whom had died might stay for weeks with the living because of the lack of energy the living had to move the body outside. In the fall of 1847, the potato harvest was sustainable and grew blight-free. However, the farmers were too weary to plant enough crops to supply the demand, as most had lost their farms, were too weak to plant and harvest, or were discouraged in planting because of their debts. Consequently, only 1/4 of the normal crop was planted and able to be harvested. With the next fall, massive amounts of potatoes were planted all over Ireland in hopes that since the last crop produced viable potatoes, the next crop would also produce healthy potatoes. The Irish sold what little they had left in order to buy potato seeds. However, conditions were once again in favor for the dreaded blight, and soon all the potato leaves turned black. The conditions turned worse as now property owners were in debt and had no choice but to evict every tenant they could. The owners would forcibly throw the tenants onto the street to die or promise them a false journey to America simply to get them out of the country. Young boys and men now started to cause destruction simply to be arrested so that they would be fed in the jails. As taxes skyrocketed, the Irish looked to other countries for survival. Thousands of Irish wandered onto surrounding countries or boarded ships for the Americas. Of the Irish arriving into America, 1 out of 5 would die due to hunger or associated disease. The famine years were a devastating time for Ireland, with great losses in population due to disease as well as migration to other countries. In total, Ireland lost about 2 million of its population to the famine years. Progress in Ireland would be slow-moving in getting back to a stable nation. With the coming of the 20th century, Ireland would embrace a more industrial-based economy, resulting in a healthier nation and growth towards a stable country. Ireland today is a popular tourist attraction because of its great beauty.